Hello, my amazing listener. Welcome back to Code Your English, the channel where we don't just learn English, we grow through it. I'm so glad you're here today, because we're going to talk about something a little bit different, but incredibly powerful: metacognition. Now, that might sound like a complicated word, metacognition. It's not a word you hear every day, right? But don't worry. By the end of this episode, you'll not only understand what it means, you'll see how it can actually help you in real life, in your learning, in your decision-making, and even in your personal growth. So, what is metacognition? Let's keep it simple. Metacognition means thinking about your thinking. That's it. It's when you take a step back and look at how your mind works. It's like watching your own thoughts from the outside. You're not just doing something, you're also aware of how and why you're doing it. Imagine you're watching your brain like it's a movie. That's metacognition. For example, let's say you're studying English vocabulary. If you just read the words over and over again, without thinking about how you learn best, you might forget most of them. But if you stop and ask yourself, what method helps me remember better? Writing the words, saying them aloud, or using flashcards? That's metacognition. You're not only studying, you're thinking about how you study. You're learning how you learn. And why does this matter? Because so many of us go through life on autopilot. We do things without asking why we do them. We repeat the same mistakes because we're not aware of our thought patterns. But when you understand your own thinking, you can make better choices. You can learn faster. You can grow deeper. You can respond instead of just react. Metacognition helps you slow down and reflect. It gives you a little space between action and reaction. That space is powerful. It's where you can ask questions like, why am I feeling this way? Or, is this belief really true? Or even, what's another way I could look at this? And just by asking those questions, you begin to shift your mindset. It's especially important if you're learning something new, like English. Maybe you've had setbacks. Maybe you've tried to speak, but felt nervous or stuck. Metacognition helps you notice those moments, understand them, and find better strategies. It reminds you that you're not just learning English, you're learning how to learn. So today, we're going to explore this topic deeply. We'll look at what metacognition really means, how it shows up in everyday life, and how you can practice it to become a more confident, thoughtful, and effective learner and person. Let's take this journey together, because the more you understand your mind, the more power you have to shape your life. Ready? Let's dive in. Breaking down the word, meta plus cognition. All right, so now that we've introduced the idea of metacognition, let's slow down for a moment and take a closer look at the word itself. Sometimes, understanding a word's roots, where it comes from, can help us really understand its meaning on a deeper level. And in this case, it actually helps a lot. The word metacognition is made up of two parts, meta and cognition. Let's start with cognition. This word comes from the Latin word cognoscere, which means to know or to understand. So when we talk about cognition, we're talking about mental processes, how we think, how we understand things, how we remember, how we learn. Cognition is basically everything your brain does when it's working. Solving problems, making decisions, understanding language, learning new ideas, all of that is part of cognition. It's your brain's way of operating in the world. Now, let's look at the first part, meta. This little prefix comes from Greek, and it means beyond, above, or about. So when we put the two parts together, meta and cognition, we get about thinking or beyond thinking. In other words, Metacognition means thinking about your own thinking. I know, that might sound a little strange at first. Like, wait, you want me to think about thinking? But that's exactly what it is. It's like you're taking a step back and looking at your own brain, not with your eyes, of course, but with your awareness. Imagine holding up a mental mirror and looking at what's going on inside your head. That's what metacognition helps you do. It's like pressing pause and saying, okay, what's going on in my mind right now? Here's a simple way to imagine it. Picture yourself standing on the ground, walking through a forest. You can only see the trees right in front of you. But now imagine getting into a hot air balloon and rising above the forest. From up there, you can see everything. The trees, the rivers, the paths, even where you came from and where you might go. That view from above? That's your bird's eye view of your brain. And that's metacognition. You're not just inside your thoughts, you're observing them from a higher place. And here's another example. Let's say you're reading something in English, and you realize your mind is wandering. Maybe you've read the same sentence 3 times, but you didn't understand it. Have you ever had that moment? I know I have. If you're just reading without awareness, you might keep going and not learn much. But if you stop and say, wait, I'm not focusing, I should slow down. That's metacognition in action. You're noticing what your brain is doing, and you're trying to manage it. You can think of it as being the coach of your own mind. Not just a player running around, but the one watching from the side and saying, maybe we need a new strategy here. And just like a good coach, you don't judge. You observe, you reflect, and you adjust. You don't need to be perfect. You just need to be curious about how you think. In fact, most of us already use metacognition. We just don't realize it. For example, when you ask yourself, did I understand what I just read? That's metacognition. When you say, this is hard for me, maybe I need to try a different way, that's metacognition. It shows up in small moments, in daily decisions, in learning new skills, and even in conversations. Another way to describe it is like mental self-awareness. Just like emotional intelligence helps us notice how we feel, metacognition helps us notice how we think. It gives us the power to slow down and say, wait, is this the best way to handle this? Or, am I being fair to myself right now? Or even, why do I keep telling myself I can't do this? Now, one thing I really want to say here is, metacognition is not about overthinking. A lot of people confuse the two. Overthinking means going in circles, worrying about everything, never taking action. But metacognition is different. It's more like checking in with yourself. It's about understanding and guiding your thoughts, not drowning in them. And the great thing is, just like any other skill, you can practice metacognition. It's not something you're born with or not. It's a mindset you can develop. And the more you practice, the more control you have over your own learning, your emotions, and your choices. You become more intentional, more focused, and more confident. So next time you catch yourself struggling with something, maybe you're feeling stuck in a task, or you're trying to learn something new, or even just trying to calm your mind. Take a moment to step outside of your thinking. Ask yourself, what's going on in my mind right now? That small question could be the start of something powerful. And that's what metacognition is all about. So, what exactly is metacognition? At its simplest, metacognition means thinking about your thinking. It's a big word, but the idea behind it is not complicated. Imagine your brain is like a computer. Metacognition is like the software that helps you watch how the computer works. It's the ability to notice and understand how you learn, solve problems, and make decisions. When you practice metacognition, you become more aware of your own thoughts. Instead of just doing things automatically, you stop and ask yourself questions like, "How am I doing this?" or "Is this method helping me?" This awareness allows you to control your learning and behavior better. For example, if you realize that reading quietly helps you understand new words better than listening, you can choose to read more. This kind of thinking helps you become a better learner. Metacognition also means you can plan ahead before starting a task. You might ask yourself, "What steps should I take?" or "What problems might I face?" During the task, you monitor your progress and adjust your actions if needed. Afterward, you reflect on what worked and what didn't. This process of planning, monitoring, and reflecting is the heart of metacognition. Why is metacognition so important? Because it helps you learn more effectively. When you understand how you think, you can fix mistakes, improve your skills, and build confidence. It helps you become independent, not just following instructions, but making smart decisions about your learning and actions. Metacognition isn't something you are born with. It's a skill that you can develop with practice. By asking yourself questions, reflecting on your experiences, and trying different approaches, you train your mind to think about thinking. And as you get better at it, you will notice improvements in many areas of your life, not only in studying English, but also in problem-solving, making choices, and handling challenges. In short, metacognition is like being your own coach. You watch how you think, understand your habits, and guide yourself to learn and grow more effectively. And once you start practicing metacognition, you'll find that learning becomes easier, more interesting, and much more rewarding. Why is metacognition important? So, now that we understand what metacognition means, thinking about your thinking, let's talk about why it's actually important. You might be wondering, okay, this sounds interesting, but how does it really help me in my life? And that's a great question. Because here's the truth. Metacognition is one of the most powerful tools for learning, decision-making, and personal growth. It's not just for students or psychologists. It's for all of us, every day. Think about this. Have you ever studied hard for a test, but felt like nothing was going into your brain? Maybe you read the same page again and again, but later, you couldn't remember anything. Or maybe you've tried learning English in the past, and you felt like you were doing everything right, listening to podcasts, reading books, memorizing vocabulary. But still, your speaking didn't improve. That's where metacognition comes in. It helps you stop and think about how you're learning. Instead of just doing more and more, you pause and ask, "Is this actually working for me?" Maybe you realize you remember words better when you use them in real conversations or when you teach them to someone else. When you notice that, you can change your strategy. That's metacognition, and it saves you time, energy, and frustration. It also helps when you're preparing for something stressful, like giving a presentation or speaking in public. Many people, even in their own language, feel nervous before speaking. But when you use metacognition, you become more aware of the thoughts that are making you nervous. For example, you might realize you're thinking, "What if I make a mistake?" Or, "What if people laugh at me?" These thoughts can create fear. But when you notice them, really notice them, you can start to challenge them. You can ask, "Is that thought true?" Or, "What's the worst that can really happen?" Just by observing your own thinking, you begin to take back control. You learn how to calm your mind and perform better, even under pressure. And let's not forget about conflicts or emotional situations. We've all been there. A disagreement with a friend, a misunderstanding with family, or even a difficult conversation at work. In those moments, it's so easy to react quickly, to say something you regret, or to shut down completely. But metacognition gives you a moment of space. It helps you ask, what am I feeling right now? Why am I feeling this? What's the best way to respond? That space, even just a few seconds, can change everything. It turns a reaction into a response. It allows you to choose your words more carefully and to act with more understanding. That's not just smart thinking, that's emotional intelligence, and it starts with metacognition. Now here's something to think about. Have you ever noticed how your own thoughts sometimes get in your way? Maybe you told yourself, I can't do this, or I'm not smart enough, or I always fail. These thoughts feel real, but often they're just habits. They're old beliefs that keep repeating. And if we never stop to look at them, we start believing them. But metacognition helps us catch those thoughts and ask, wait a second, is this really true? That one question can open the door to a completely different way of thinking and living. So, why is metacognition important? Because it helps you learn better. It helps you grow faster. It helps you become more confident, more aware, and more in control of your life. Without it, we often repeat the same mistakes, not because we're lazy or not smart, but because we're not thinking about how we think. We're not paying attention to the deeper patterns behind our actions. When you practice metacognition regularly, you start noticing things you never noticed before. You begin to understand yourself better, your strengths, your weaknesses, your habits, your fears. You stop living on autopilot, and you start living with purpose. You don't just go through life. You grow through life. And the best part? You don't need anything special to start. You don't need a fancy journal or a course. You just need a few quiet minutes and the courage to ask yourself questions like, how did I do today? What could I have done differently? Or, what was I thinking when I made that choice? These simple questions can lead to big insights. So, whether you're trying to improve your English, change a habit, prepare for a big challenge, or simply understand yourself better, metacognition is your starting point. It's like turning on a light inside your brain. You see more clearly. You act more wisely. You grow more deeply. And honestly, once you start using it, you'll wonder how you ever lived without it. Metacognition in daily life. Now that we've talked about what metacognition is and why it's important, let's look at how it actually shows up in our daily lives. Because the truth is, metacognition isn't just something you do during study time or in a classroom. It's something that can help you in your everyday decisions, habits, and emotions. And once you start noticing it, you'll realize how useful it really is. Let's start with something many of us struggle with: procrastination. Have you ever had a task to do? Something simple like replying to an email, studying for a test, or cleaning your room. And instead of doing it, you found yourself scrolling on your phone, watching videos, or doing everything else except that one thing. That's procrastination. But metacognition helps you pause and ask yourself, why am I putting this off? Maybe you're avoiding it because it feels boring. Or maybe you're afraid you won't do it perfectly. A lot of the time, procrastination isn't just laziness. It's perfectionism in disguise. We delay something because we want it to be perfect, and if we're not sure we can do it perfectly, we don't do it at all. Metacognition helps us notice that thought pattern. And when we notice it, we can change it. We can say, okay, I'm afraid of doing this wrong, but doing something is better than doing nothing. Here's another common situation: overthinking. Have you ever found yourself lying in bed, thinking about something that happened during the day? Maybe you said something awkward, or maybe you're worried about what someone thinks of you. Your brain starts spinning, creating 100 what-ifs. What if they misunderstood me? What if I made a mistake? What if I looked stupid? It happens to all of us. But this is a perfect moment to use metacognition. You can stop and ask, is this thought helping me? If it's just making you feel worse without solving anything, maybe it's time to let it go. You can shift your mindset by reminding yourself, I did my best, and that's enough. Or, one moment doesn't define who I am. This kind of self-awareness doesn't stop overthinking completely, but it helps you take a step back and stop the cycle before it grows too big. Let me share a quick personal story. Something small, but powerful. A few months ago, I was working on a podcast episode. I wanted it to be helpful, inspiring, and easy to follow. I had some ideas written down, but I kept deleting my notes and rewriting them. I told myself, this isn't good enough. It doesn't sound right. It's not perfect yet. I spent hours trying to fix every small detail, and then I realized I wasn't really writing anymore. I was just being stuck in perfectionism. That's when I caught myself. I stopped and asked, what am I doing? Why am I being so hard on myself? And the answer was clear. I was afraid of people not liking it. But once I said that out loud, I felt lighter. I reminded myself, it's okay to improve, but it's also okay to start messy. Progress is better than perfection. And honestly, that small shift in thinking helped me finish the episode and feel proud of what I had done, even if it wasn't 100% perfect. Another place where metacognition can really help is with planning and consistency. Maybe you've tried to start a new habit, like waking up early, going to the gym, or studying English for 30 minutes a day. At first, you feel excited and motivated, but after a few days or a week, life gets busy. You skip one day, then two, and suddenly the habit is gone. It's easy to feel disappointed in yourself, but instead of giving up, try using metacognition. Ask yourself, what stopped me from being consistent? Maybe you were too tired at night. Maybe your plan wasn't realistic. Maybe you didn't have reminders or support. The point isn't to blame yourself. It's to understand yourself. When you reflect, you can adjust your plan. Maybe you study in the morning instead of at night. Maybe you set smaller goals. And most importantly, you learn that being consistent doesn't mean being perfect. It means coming back again and again, even after you fall off track. Finally, one powerful way to bring metacognition into your daily life is through journaling. Writing in a journal isn't just for writers or creative people. It's for anyone who wants to become more self-aware. When you write about your day, your feelings, or your thoughts, you begin to see patterns. You notice what makes you feel stressed or what gives you energy. You understand what kind of mindset you usually carry. Positive, negative, or somewhere in between. And you can start to ask yourself better questions. What worked well today? What do I want to change tomorrow? What thoughts are lifting me up? And what thoughts are bringing me down? Even just 5 minutes a day can make a big difference in how clearly you see yourself. So, metacognition in daily life isn't about being perfect or overanalyzing everything. It's about building a habit of self-awareness, learning to notice your thoughts, reflect on them, and guide them in a healthier direction. Whether it's dealing with procrastination, overthinking, perfectionism, or planning, you always have the chance to pause, reflect, and move forward with more clarity. And that's how real growth happens. Not by changing everything overnight, but by becoming a little more aware, a little more mindful, every single day. The two main parts of metacognition. So far, we've talked about what metacognition is, why it matters, and how we use it in daily life. But now, let's go a little deeper. Not too technical, just enough to understand how this works inside our minds. Metacognition actually has two main parts: metacognitive knowledge and metacognitive regulation. Don't worry, these aren't complicated terms. Once you hear the meaning, you'll realize you're already using both of them in different parts of your life. Let's begin with metacognitive knowledge. This simply means what you know about your own thinking. It's the part of metacognition that involves your awareness, being able to understand how you learn, what you struggle with, and what kind of strategies work best for you. For example, maybe you know that you learn better when you speak things out loud, instead of just reading silently. Or maybe you've noticed that when you're tired or stressed, it's harder for you to stay focused. That awareness, knowing your strengths and weaknesses when it comes to thinking and learning, is metacognitive knowledge. It also includes the things you know about different types of tasks and learning methods. For instance, you might realize that writing an essay requires different thinking than preparing for a speaking exam. You might also know that memorizing new vocabulary works better when you connect new words to real-life examples, not just translate them into your first language. This kind of knowledge helps you prepare smarter, not just harder. Let me give you a simple example. Imagine you're trying to learn 20 new English words. Now, someone with strong metacognitive knowledge will stop and think, what's the best way for me to remember these? They might say, well, I remember things better when I group them into categories like food, travel, or work. Or they might think, I need to write them in full sentences, not just lists. That way, I see how they're used in real conversation. These kinds of decisions come from understanding how your own mind works. Now, let's talk about the second part. Metacognitive regulation. This is all about managing your thinking. It's not just about knowing how you think. It's about using that knowledge to guide your learning, solve problems, and stay on track. This part is more active. It includes things like planning how you're going to approach a task, monitoring your progress, and making changes if something isn't working. In short, it's about being in control of your mental process. Let's go back to that vocabulary example. You decided to learn 20 new words by writing them in sentences. Great. That's metacognitive knowledge. But metacognitive regulation is what happens next. As you practice, you ask yourself, is this helping me remember the words? Maybe halfway through, you realize that you're still forgetting some of them. So you pause and think, okay, maybe I need to use these words in a voice recording or talk to a friend using them. That's regulation. You're not just doing the task automatically. You're thinking about how well it's working, and if needed, changing your method. This is also something you use when you plan your day. For example, if you know you focus better in the morning, you might schedule your most difficult tasks early in the day. Or maybe you're studying for an exam, and you give yourself short breaks every 30 minutes to stay fresh. These small but smart choices are signs of metacognitive regulation. You're not just reacting to life. You're actively shaping your experience based on what you know about your thinking. A big part of regulation is self-monitoring, checking in with yourself as you go. For example, during a conversation in English, you might notice, wait, I'm using the same two phrases again and again. That awareness helps you adjust. You might try to use a new phrase you recently learned, or slow down your speaking to think more clearly. And when the conversation is over, you reflect. What went well? What can I do better next time? That reflection is regulation too. You're reviewing your performance and planning your next steps. Another part of metacognitive regulation